Outpost Theta was nothing more than a rocky stretch on the far edge of Sector 9. A speck of dust compared to Earth, a blip on the radar of the galaxy. It wasn't even military, just a civilian science colony. 37 humans lived there. Botanists, biochemists, astrocartographers, and their children. Peaceful, boring, forgotten, until the Koru came. No one saw them coming. No declaration, no warning, no demands. The first distress signal was brief, only 3 seconds of static followed by one word, barely audible through the garble. Fire. Then silence. At Earth Command, General Riva sat in the war room, fingers steepled, staring at the empty screen like it might scream the answer if she waited long enough. Commander Mills stood behind her, pale, stiff. We sent a response drone. It got nothing back. No signals, no signs of life. Just scorched soil. Riva didn't speak. She just tapped her fingers on the table, once, twice, 3 times, then said in a flat voice, "Play me the satellite feed." It showed them the aftermath. Craters, ash, human bodies, or what was left of them. A child's hand, still clutching a stuffed animal, poked out from the rubble. Blood and dust blended into the soil. One of the buildings still smoldered, like it was crying out days later. No survivors. None. It wasn't just murder. It was an insult. The Koru didn't attack military stations. They didn't go after Earth's fleets. They chose the softest, most innocent target and annihilated it like it was a message. And maybe it was, but Earth had stopped being a passive member of the galactic order decades ago. Riva stood, slowly. "I want orbital scans of the Koru homeworld within the hour. Bring me targeting coordinates, and wake up the S3 crews." Mills blinked. "You're authorizing full retaliation?" Riva's eyes didn't blink. "I'm authorizing extinction." The room went quiet. There was no debate, no vote, because humans remembered. We remembered the centuries of being ignored by other races, treated as backward apes with fancy ships, patronized, mocked, bordered, and now attacked. But we also remembered our wars, the way Earth burned in World War III, the tenacity, the rage, the fact that humans were not the fastest, not the strongest, not the most advanced, but we were relentless. The Koru had struck first. Earth would respond last. On board the dreadnought Vengeance, Captain Leon received her orders in silence. She didn't smile, didn't flinch. She simply turned to her crew, 300 of Earth's deadliest operators, and said, "You know the orders. You know what they did. We're not going to negotiate. We're going to erase." The Koru homeworld, Haldron, was a lush blue-green planet, twice Earth's size, populated by 1.4 billion Koru, sleek, mantis-like aliens with crystalline bones and a culture of cold efficiency. They prided themselves on strategy, logic, superiority. They had no idea what was coming. Because humans didn't fight wars the way others did. We didn't engage in honorable duels or measured responses. We fought like animals when cornered. And now, we weren't cornered. We were unleashed. The fleet arrived in orbit of Haldron 47 hours after the first strike. By then, every human on Earth had seen the images of Outpost Theta. Parents cried in the streets. Volunteers flooded the military channels. The planet grieved, and then it got angry. Earth didn't send diplomats. It sent S3 warheads, sun-forged antimatter bombs capable of atomizing cities. Before launching, Captain Leon opened a wideband transmission. Not to talk, just to show. A looped feed of the outpost, no audio, just the burning buildings, the child's hand, the crater where the dormitories used to be. It played for 10 minutes, then the feed cut, and the sky began to fall on Haldron. The moment the first S-3 detonated over Haldran's upper atmosphere, the sky lit up like a second sun. Koru satellites turned to molten fragments. Their planetary shield, designed to stop meteor strikes and slow down enemy vessels, shimmered for a few seconds, then cracked like glass under a hammer. The first city to vanish was Keldrith, the capital. 1 second, it was a bustling metropolis of silver spires and vertical gardens, shimmering towers and flowing hoverways. In the next, it was a pit of white fire, vaporized from the center outward. There was no time for evacuations, no time for alarms. One pulse of raw antimatter erased 5 million Koru. Captain Leon didn't flinch as the data streamed across her holoscreen. Heat signatures, loss of biomass, power grids flickering out. The ship's AI, Argo, reported in a calm voice. S-3 detonation successful. Target city Keldrith eliminated. Casualty estimate 5.2 million. She gave no order for a pause. There would be no warnings, no time for the Koru to raise hands or beg forgiveness. Not after what they did to Theta. Continue with target sequence. Behind her, the crew worked like clockwork. No one cried, no one laughed. It was a silence born from something deeper than rage, something colder. This wasn't revenge, this was retribution. On Haldran, chaos unfolded. The Koru had always thought of themselves as untouchable. Their enemies in the past had fought political wars, diplomatic dances. Earth wasn't playing that game. Earth came for blood. And Earth didn't miss. 5 more cities followed in the next 40 minutes. Fire bloomed across the surface like red petals, each one a kiss of extinction. The planet's crust began to fracture from the sheer heat stress. Clouds turned to black smoke. Oceans boiled at the edges. Koru command centers scrambled to respond, but their communication networks were down. Satellites gone. Command relays obliterated. They couldn't even send a surrender call. Inside the war room on the Vengeance, Commander Deal, second in command, turned to Captain Leon. "They're blind. They're not even firing back." "They don't have the time to think," Leon replied flatly. "We didn't come to fight a war. We came to end one." Still, she felt a pulse beneath her ribs, something cold. Not guilt, something worse. Memory. She remembered Outpost Theta. She'd served with Dr. Karu there, years ago. A sweet man. Quiet. Used to talk about growing Earth-compatible flora on alien soils. His wife and daughter were with him. They were listed among the dead. All 3 had burned. Leon clenched her fists behind her back. No, she didn't feel guilty. She felt justified. But Earth wasn't done. Back on the planet, one of the few surviving Koru generals, Tivashan, stood in a bunker, wide-eyed and shaking. The air stank of sulfur and melting circuitry. His communication screens were dead, his officers either screaming or dead. He turned to his aides, speaking in the sharp click Koru dialect. But all that came through was raw panic. "This cannot be. They were primitive a generation ago. They are humans!" He hadn't seen them coming. No one had. The Galactic Council had spent decades ignoring Earth, watching them rise with suspicion, then brushing them off as emotional, irrational, too aggressive, too human. They were right. And now it was too late. Another blast shook the underground walls. Concrete and steel, Koru design, crumbled like paper. Tavashan tried to run, but he didn't make it to the door. The ceiling collapsed, burying him in silence. Meanwhile, in the upper orbit of Haldran, Earth's fleet split into 3 groups. The Vengeance led the planetary bombardment. 2 support ships, Relentless and Ashbourne, began atmospheric descents, targeting industrial zones and power cores buried beneath the surface. Their orders were simple. No infrastructure must survive. On Earth, the news had already gone viral. Everyone knew. Everyone was watching. There were mixed emotions, cheering, tears, rage. Some wanted more, others wanted it to stop. A few protests broke out in the more peaceful regions of Earth. But those voices were drowned by grief. The footage from Theta was played on loop across Earth cities. Memorial walls lit up with the names of the lost. 37 colonists, 11 of them children. They were the reason. President Araya stood before the United Earth Assembly 2 hours into the retaliation. Her voice was calm, resolute. We did not start this. We did not ask for war. But Earth is no longer a beggar at the galactic table. We are not sheep waiting to be slaughtered. We are the flame that answers darkness. The Koru struck at our children, our scientists, our peace, and now they have our answer. In the background, Haldron burned. By hour 5, over 60% of the planet's surface had been decimated. The Koru hadn't even gotten a single vessel off-world. Their fleets were in disarray, dockyards bombed, shipyards melted. Captain Leon finally gave the order. Deploy the Black Rain. The crew froze for a moment. The Black Rain wasn't a weapon of war. It was a weapon of finality. Engineered nanobots, programmed to dismantle complex systems on a molecular level. Buildings, power cores, infrastructure, biotech, even food processing plants. The Black Rain wouldn't kill the remaining Koru instantly, but it would take away any chance they had of rebuilding. A slow, surgical extinction. Commander Dale looked at her. There's still a few cities untouched. Rural zones. You sure about this? Leon didn't blink. They chose war. Now they'll learn what humans mean when we say never again. The Black Rain poured like mist, gray, glittering, almost beautiful in the atmosphere, and wherever it fell, things stopped working, not with explosions, not with fire, just silence. The planet died beneath its own weight. In one of the last surviving Koru shelters, a young technician, barely of age, clutched his mother and whispered, "Why did they do this? We never even heard of Outpost Theta. We didn't know." She said nothing. There was nothing to say. The war was never really a war. It was an answer. A message carved in planetary ash. Never. Touch. Humanity. Again. In orbit, Captain Leon sat alone in her private chamber. The mission was nearly complete. Her screen blinked with confirmation logs. Haldran, 92% annihilation rate. Remaining cities non-functional. Total loss of biosphere expected within 72 hours. Civilian survival rate under 0.04%. She stared at the report, then closed the file. She should have felt something. Victory, grief, maybe even regret. But all she felt was quiet, until her hand reached for the hollow pendant around her neck. She tapped it gently. A face appeared, Dr. Carew, laughing in some old home video. His daughter was in his lap, holding a flower, their faces frozen in time, untouched by fire. She watched it play 3 times. Then she shut it off. There would be no celebration, no medals, just silence. Back on Earth, the skies were lit not with fireworks but with lanterns, one for every soul lost on Theta. A memorial wall was constructed in under a week. Across all time zones, people came to pay respects. Some still questioned the scale of Earth's response. Some called it monstrous, but most stood in silence. And one plaque beneath the wall said everything. For every Outpost Theta, there will be a Haldron. Never again. The Galactic Council, once dismissive of Earth, now sat in panic. Messages flooded Earth's diplomatic channels, apologies, condemnations, warnings. But Earth didn't answer. Not yet. Earth didn't care what the Council thought. Earth had sent its message, and the galaxy had received it, loud, clear, and on fire. The age of humanity begging for a seat at the table was over. Now Earth stood alone, feared, respected. And for the first time in galactic history, untouchable. 3 days after the last human warship left Haldron's orbit, the planet was officially declared sterile. Nothing moved on the surface, no light, no signal, no sound. Oceans were acid, skies were soot. The black rain had done its work with quiet precision, stripping every trace of civilization down to its bones. In the dark cold of space, an unspoken truth settled across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer to be provoked. But what truly changed wasn't in orbit or on scorched ground. It was in the silence that followed. Across the known sectors, the reactions came quickly. On Virex 9, a planet run by trade guilds that once refused Earth's membership for being too young, entire fleets scrambled to update defense protocols. Diplomatic envoys were rushed to Earth, begging for reassurances. None were returned. On the political capital world of Zephyra, the Galactic Council convened an emergency summit. 11 species, some ancient, some new, sat in silence as they watched footage of Haldron's last transmission. A brief, blurry satellite feed of one final S3 warhead breaching the crust, followed by static. Ambassador Yrel of the Trelk Confederacy, known for her cool logic, was the first to speak. This changes everything. Humans are not like us. We cannot treat them as we did before. An elder of the Stothian race, a gas-based life form older than most civilizations, drifted slowly in its containment sphere. They are fire. We handled fire like it was smoke. Now we burn. Still, one voice among them remained defiant. Ambassador Dren of the Olari, a species with long-standing tensions with humanity. "This was not justice," Dren spat. "It was slaughter. The Koru attacked a single outpost. Earth destroyed an entire world." Silence. Then Yrel replied coldly, "You call it slaughter. They call it balance. One outpost for one planet. Fair trade, by human standards." "And if they decide something we do is an insult?" Dren hissed. "Do we lose a moon, a station, a species?" That was the question none of them could answer, because no one truly understood humans anymore. Perhaps they never had. Back on Earth, the mood was shifting. The memorials still stood. The grief still clung to the air like ash. But beneath the mourning came something more enduring. Resolve. Not just to survive, but to dominate. Earth's citizens had seen what happened when they let their guard down. No more. Military recruitment numbers spiked. Young men and women lined up at spaceports to join the fleets. The space armada doubled in size within months. Weapons manufacturing contracts surged. The phrase, "never another Theta," became a cultural vow, and in underground labs, something darker began to grow. Project Red Halo. Buried beneath the Himalayas, Red Halo had started as a contingency, a secret protocol for total planetary defense and large-scale retaliation. But after Haldron, the project shifted focus. It was no longer about retaliation. It was about prevention. General Riva, the architect of the Koru annihilation, now oversaw Red Halo herself. Her command center sat deep in the ice, surrounded by reinforced titanium walls and a staff that never left the mountain. A scientist approached her with a datapad. "We've made progress on the Star Killers. It's possible. With enough antimatter stockpiled, we could design a bomb that could extinguish a sun." Riva didn't flinch. "Do it." She didn't ask if it was ethical. She didn't ask who the enemy might be. Earth would never be vulnerable again. Not even to stars. Meanwhile, Captain Leon was called back to Earth. Her ship, Vengeance, was docked above the equator for deep rearmament. She stood in a darkened observation tower overlooking the shipyard, where technicians moved like ants around the giant war machines. A voice spoke behind her. "You made us untouchable." She turned to see President Araya herself. Small, calm, but her eyes were harder now, like she hadn't slept properly since the outpost was lost. "No," Leon replied quietly. "The Koru did that. I just reminded the galaxy we bleed when cut." Araya walked beside her. "And when we bleed, we drown others in it." A pause stretched between them. Then Araya whispered, "I don't regret it, do you?" Leon's jaw tightened. "I regret it was necessary." The president nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. "They're afraid of us now. You know that. They'll never trust us again." "They never trusted us to begin with," Leon said. Araya's voice softened. "So, what now, Captain? We become monsters to avoid being prey?" Leon didn't respond. She didn't need to. The answer hung in the air, obvious, heavy. Yes. Because Earth had realized something terrifying and liberating. That peace in the galaxy wasn't earned through diplomacy. It was taken through power. And the galaxy had listened. Every single species now marked Earth as a red zone civilization. Trade reduced, borders respected. Patrols doubled near human sectors, not because they feared attack, but because they feared the consequences. On a distant research station near the edge of uncharted space, a group of alien scientists whispered about Earth in hushed tones. One of them, a Yalari data analyst, had compiled every known record of human military response over the last 2 centuries. He looked at the chart. One trend stood out. Human retaliation increases exponentially with emotional provocation. Not tactical value, not resource loss, emotion, love, grief, rage. The humans didn't just fight, they avenged. And that was something no galactic civilization had ever prepared for, a species that weaponized its emotions. On Earth, the newsfeed slowly shifted from mourning to pride. A generation of children were now growing up under the shadow of Haldren, a name that wasn't spoken in shame, but as warning. History classes no longer taught Earth's struggle for recognition. They taught Earth's arrival as a galactic force. Schools played dramatized videos of the Koru attack, then followed it with scenes of the fleet's retaliation. Teenagers quoted General Riva's speech like scripture. In orbit, more ships were built, bigger, faster, smarter, and every one of them carried a symbol etched into their hull, a red flame wrapped around a shattered planet. The new sigil of Earth's interstellar command. But not everyone celebrated. A small group of dissidents, philosophers, ex-military officers, and pacifists gathered in secret in what remained of Geneva's old peace coalition building. They spoke in quiet circles, lit candles for the lost on both sides. "There were children on Haldran," one woman whispered. "They didn't vote for war," another said. "They didn't drop the bombs on Theta." One older man, a retired admiral, looked up from his glass. "But they raised the ones who did, just like we're raising ours." His words hit the room like ice water. They weren't against justice, but they feared what humanity was becoming. Because what do you call a species that responds to pain with obliteration? What do you call a people who answer loss with planetary death? You don't call them allies. You call them gods or monsters. And so the galaxy began to split, not in open war, not yet, but in distance, caution. Some species leaned toward appeasement. Others began secret weapons programs. Treaties were rewritten with Earth in mind. The balance of power had changed forever. And as the months passed, a strange new fear began to grow. Not that Earth would attack again, but that something, someday, might attack us again, and that Earth's response would be worse, Because now, humanity wasn't just feared, it was watching, waiting, and it would never mourn quietly again. 6 months after the fall of Haldron, the galaxy settled into a tense, artificial calm, a peace built not on diplomacy, but on fear. Earth had done the unthinkable, and the galaxy was still struggling to understand how to live with it. Trade with humans resumed slowly, carefully, not because the galaxy forgave, but because it feared exclusion. Earth's resources, raw minerals, advanced AI, unique biologics, were too valuable to ignore. But the terms had changed. Now Earth dictated them. When Earth sent emissaries to once hostile planets, they weren't greeted with cold courtesy anymore. They were welcomed with processions, red carpets, silence, fear disguised as respect. The Vengeance, Captain Leon's ship, was never disarmed or demilitarized. Wherever it traveled, it was accompanied by 2 escorts and a visible payload of S-3 class warheads. It was Earth's floating message to the galaxy. We can reach you anywhere, but power breeds paranoia, and silence breeds plotting. In the shadows of the Eastern Spiral, beyond the fringe of known human space, something stirred. The Varkari swarm. No one talked about them much. An insectoid species, exiled centuries ago after consuming 3 populated moons during a resource famine. They had been driven back to the black regions of the void and sealed off by galactic treaty. But treaties meant little to the desperate. The Varkari had watched Earth's retaliation. They had studied the ruins of Haldron through long-range quantum sensors. Unlike others, they were not afraid. They were fascinated. Because unlike the other species of the galaxy, rigid, bureaucratic, layered in protocol, the Varkari understood Earth's nature instinctively. Violent, vengeful, predatory, but also emotional, predictable. We strike not where they are strong, one Varkari strategist clicked in their hive language. We strike where they are wounded. And they found the wound. 2 months later, on the edge of Sector 12, the human colony of New Florence went dark. Population, 11,000. A thriving agritech world. No military value. The message sent to Earth was not words, but a streamed feed. A live execution. Dozens of colonists, men, women, children, stacked into containment cells, injected with acidic compounds that liquefied their insides. No demands, no warnings, just slow, deliberate agony. The Varkari weren't looking for leverage. They were testing Earth's limits. General Riva received the transmission in silence. Her staff waited for orders. But this time, she said nothing for a full hour. Instead, she stared at the final image. A boy, no older than 6, eyes wide, screaming as his skin dissolved. His voice was cut off mid-scream when the feed was terminated. Then Riva stood and said 5 words. "Bring the Leviathan online. Now." The room froze. No one questioned her. Because the Leviathan wasn't a weapon of war. It was a weapon of eradication. Still experimental. Still classified. But now, it would be used. Earth had built the Leviathan in secret orbit over Europa. A machine the size of a small moon. It wasn't designed to attack. It didn't carry bombs or missiles. It carried graviton drills, atmospheric rippers, and planetary fusion cores. The blueprint was horrifyingly simple. Strip the atmosphere. Crack the core. Consume the crust. Leave nothing but vacuum. The Varkari had assumed Earth would retaliate like before, with overwhelming firepower, S-3s, orbital strikes. They didn't expect Earth to erase the entire solar system. Within a week, a fleet of 42 ships moved toward the Varkari cluster. At the center was the Leviathan, flanked by every dreadnought Earth possessed. Captain Leon was among them. Her ship now outfitted with experimental shielding and direct AI link targeting systems. Earth didn't care if the Varkari were ready. It didn't matter anymore. But within the United Earth Council, dissent began to stir for the first time. Ambassador Kyo, a former peacekeeper from Luna, stood in a secret session and raised his voice. "We are about to commit genocide on a scale never seen, not retaliation, erasure." No one answered. So he added, "What separates us from monsters if this is our only response?" President Araya looked tired, older, hardened. She replied slowly, "What separates us is that we waited until our people screamed, then we screamed back louder." Kyo said, "They want to bait us into proving their point, that humanity is the villain. You're walking into their trap." Araya leaned forward. "Then let the galaxy watch. Let them see what happens when humans break." And they did. The fleet reached the edge of the Varkari system in 10 days. The Varkari prepared a defense, lining their orbit with bone ships and particle webs. Their swarm spires launched endless streams of hive drones. It wasn't enough. The Leviathan activated its drills, descending into orbit like a god with a scalpel. Within 2 hours, it had pierced the crust of the first Varkari planet. The core was destabilized. The atmosphere burned off into space. The sky turned black, then purple, then red. Then the planet folded inward like crumpled paper, pulled into its own ruptured core. 1 down, 4 to go. Varkari communications jammed the quantum net with desperate calls, lies, pleas, propaganda. "We only targeted humans because they attacked Haldren. We acted to restore balance. The humans are the aggressors." Earth didn't answer, because by now, Earth didn't negotiate with murderers. Earth corrected them. Over the next 12 days, 3 more Varkari worlds were destroyed. Not bombed, dismantled, carefully, like a message being written one planet at a time. The last world was their nursery moon, home to unhatched larvae, the future of their race. Riva paused there. She held a private vote among her command. "Do we spare the eggs?" she asked. The room was divided. Some said yes. Mercy matters. Others said no. They'll hatch. They'll remember. In the end, Riva ordered the Leviathan to sterilize the moon, without destroying it. The eggs would never hatch. The planet would remain a hollow tomb, a warning. Back on Earth, the reaction was fierce. Some celebrated, others wept. The peace coalition fractured completely, some members resigning, others forming a new resistance underground, fearing that Earth had lost its soul. In the media, debates raged. Is humanity becoming what we once feared? Or is this what survival looks like in the galaxy? President Araya finally addressed the planet. She stood alone on a black stage, with the names of New Florence's dead projected behind her, name after name, family after family. Her voice was steady. "We did not seek war, we never do. But we will never allow another Theta, never another Florence. We are not conquerors, we are not tyrants. But if you come for our children, we will become your extinction." No applause, just silence. But her message was heard. And far across the stars, the galaxy shivered again. Because Earth was no longer just feared, it was inevitable. The silence after the Varkari extinction was not peace. It was the silence that comes when everyone holds their breath, not out of reverence, but out of fear. Across the stars, the message had been received. Too loud, too brutal, too final. Earth had demonstrated that it could not only end wars, it could erase species, and it would do so without flinching. But the aftermath was not what Earth expected. There were no declarations of loyalty, no alliances forged in admiration. Instead, the galaxy withdrew. One by one, embassies closed. Trade pacts stalled. Joint research stations that once celebrated collaboration began dismantling their human sections. Earth vessels were denied refueling at Allied ports. Scientific cooperation turned cold. Not because the galaxy was united against Earth, but because it was divided within itself, unsure whether to engage or hide. In many systems, civilians referred to Earth in hushed voices, calling it the flame, the red womb, the end speaker. Some feared Earth as divine punishment, others as madness with engines, and in this tension cracks began to form, not in the galaxy, but on Earth itself. It started small. A university professor in Nairobi published a widely read essay titled "Moral Gravity: Why Earth is Falling." It was banned within days. Then came a whistleblower, Commander Halen, formerly attached to the Leviathan's internal AI systems. He appeared on an anonymous darknet stream with a chilling claim. "We tested the Leviathan on a rogue asteroid 2 months before Haldran. The system was ready long before the Varkari attack. We didn't build it for defense. We built it because someone knew this would happen." The stream was scrubbed from official channels in minutes, but it was too late. The resistance had heard it. Formed in the quiet underbellies of Luna, the resistance was no longer a collection of peace activists and political dissidents. It was growing into something organized, armed, angry, not at the galaxy, but at Earth's government. They called themselves the Recall. Their belief was simple. Earth had gone too far. Haldran was retaliation. The Varkari response? Overkill. The Leviathan? A war crime wrapped in steel. They didn't seek surrender. They sought correction. At their first recorded summit, one of their commanders, a former Marine named Els Renner, gave a speech that rippled across encrypted comms. "We became what we feared. We don't win anymore. We silence. We don't defend. We erase. This isn't power. It's rot. And it's in our bones now." Even within the United Earth Command, concerns surfaced. Captain Leon, back in orbit aboard Vengeance, had been granted a rare 6-week leave, but she didn't return to her family estates or the Arcadian resorts like most officers. She went to Theta, or what was left of it. A single burnt structure stood amid the wasteland. Half a research dome, buried in blackened sand. Charred bones had long been removed, but their shadows still clung to the ground. She walked in silence. Alone. No cameras, no medals. And when she reached the old command post, she stood beneath the ruined communications tower and whispered, "I did it for you." But the ghosts said nothing. Later, she received a private transmission from General Riva. "We're losing ground, not in space, but in the mind. Public trust is fraying. The recall is gaining traction. We need something to hold them together." Captain Leon responded without emotion. "What do you want me to do? Kill the truth?" Riva didn't answer. Instead, she sent a data packet. A new assignment, Operation Iron Pulse. It wasn't about war. It was about optics. Earth intelligence had detected a pocket of suffering on the rim planet Jorvex 2, a trade hub devastated by a disease outbreak. Over 200,000 non-human civilians, Trelk, Valari, minor species, were dying. Their own governments had abandoned them. Earth could intervene, send medships, supplies, human doctors, footage, a humanitarian campaign to paint Earth as a savior again. Leon resisted. "We're not a charity, we're a hammer." Riva replied, "Then show them we can also build." She accepted. She didn't know why. Guilt, maybe. Or the silence of Theta. Still clinging to her boots. When the Earth medships arrived at Jorvex 2, the locals expected invasion. Instead, they received cure packs, food drones, and bioregenerative gels. Human engineers stabilized the atmospheric systems. A full wing of medical AI was deployed to scan and treat the infected. Within a month, the outbreak was contained. And for the first time since Haldran, Earth was welcomed. News feeds across the galaxy began to shift. Tentatively, carefully, A headline on a neutral planet read, "Earth heals, not just hurts. Hope after the flame?" But even as Earth extended a hand, other fingers curled into fists. The Karn exiles, a once marginal warrior race forced into hiding centuries ago, announced their re-emergence. In a broadcast intercepted by Earth Intel, their leader, a brute named Vatan Zur, declared, "Humanity is a plague. You don't negotiate with fire, you drown it." The message ended with footage of a human science outpost in Sector 19 being overrun and torched. The scientists, neutral, were executed on screen. The Council condemned it, but quietly, weakly, because many still feared Earth's next response might be worse than the crime. But this time, Earth did nothing. No ships, no S-3s, no Leviathan. Captain Leon herself recommended restraint. "We hit back, we become the monster again. Let the Council deal with the exiles. Let them prove they care." It was a calculated move. And it worked. The Council, faced with Earth's surprising silence, realized they were being watched, not for aggression, but for courage. For the first time in decades, the Council voted unanimously to deploy a multi-species task force to hunt the Karn exiles. Earth didn't participate. It observed. And slowly, trust began to return. But trust was fragile, and Earth's inner fracture lines were getting deeper. The recall executed its first major action, a full cyber shutdown of the AI core that powered Earth's orbital logistics grid. For 3 minutes, over 70 cargo ships drifted powerless in orbit. Emergency protocols kicked in. No lives were lost, but a message was received. A recall transmission hijacked every terminal in EarthGov buildings for 6 seconds. Just one sentence in stark white on black. "You erased their planet. We will rewrite yours." Security forces swept in. Over 50 recall members were arrested, but support for them only grew. Protests returned to Earth's streets. Quiet at first. Then louder. Students, veterans, families of those lost on Florence and Theta, people who supported retaliation but feared what it had become. Earth stood now at a crossroads, a legend, a symbol, a tyrant, a savior, and at the center people like Leon and Riva were left to navigate a legacy soaked in both blood and fire. In her quarters, Captain Leon stared at the stars from her viewport. Once, she had believed in revenge, believed it was righteous. Now she wasn't so sure. The Varkari were gone. But her dreams were not free. Every night she heard that boy on New Florence. His scream, then silence. And now Earth walked into the future on the edge of a blade. One step forward, one step back. The galaxy watched, waiting to see what kind of god humanity would become next. The walls of Earth were still standing, but inside, something had started to crack. Not steel, not circuitry, conscience. 6 months after the recall's first strike, a temporary blackout of Earth's orbital grid, the world was no longer united in grief or vengeance. It was divided by memory. Theta and Florence were no longer wounds. They had become weapons, used by both sides in a growing civil Cold War. Earth's leaders, once revered for their strength, were now walking symbols of the past. General Riva's approval ratings dropped for the first time in her decades-long career. Even President Araya, the iron-willed face of the retaliation doctrine, found herself giving speeches to half-filled halls. But on the darker side of Earth's moon, deep within the abandoned excavation tunnels of Outpost K-47, the recall wasn't just protesting anymore. It was planning. Els Renner stood before a digital map of Earth's entire defense network, each orbital cannon, shipyard, and command relay glowing dim red. "Each one of these nodes," she said, pointing to the grid, "runs through a quantum link protocol designed by the Earth Interstellar Defense Corps, and every protocol was written by a human hand." A younger rebel, tech-savvy and wide-eyed, frowned. Meaning? Meaning humans make mistakes, and we've already found 2. She tapped her tablet and highlighted 2 nodes, Zeta Relay Prime and Tantalus Orbital Shield Array. One was Earth's central communications distributor. The other powered half the orbital defense cannons that surrounded the planet. If we shut them down simultaneously, she continued, we won't just interrupt Earth's systems. We will expose it. We will make it vulnerable. For once, Earth will feel what it's like to be defenseless. The room was tense, not with fear, but with determination. Because to the recall, this wasn't just rebellion, it was restoration. They didn't want to destroy Earth. They wanted to remind it what it meant to be human. Back in the command chambers under Olympus Mons, General Riva paced before her advisory staff. A digital briefing floated in the air. Intercepted transmissions, predicted recall supply routes, encrypted message fragments. They're planning something bigger, she said. Something coordinated. We're seeing cyber probes hitting deep systems, not just infrastructure, fleet command nodes. Commander Mills, her second in command, looked pale. Do you think they want to trigger a shutdown during an operation? Riva didn't blink. No, they want to trigger one before an operation. When we least expect it. She turned to the room. We are no longer just at war with ideas. The recall has become a strategic threat. Somewhere in the skies above, the dreadnought Vengeance prepared for launch again. Captain Leon, who once watched the destruction of Haldran from the bridge of that very ship, was reluctant to return. But orders were orders. She stood alone in the officer's lift, staring at her reflection. She had lost weight. Her face was sharper, her eyes darker. A voice broke the silence. You're not the same woman who gave the fire order on Haldran. Leon turned. It was Dr. Miran Cho, fleet counselor, one of the few civilians cleared for long-term deployment. No, Leon said. That woman believed justice was about balance. And now? Leon sighed. Now I know it's about convenience. The counselor didn't answer. Just studied her carefully, then handed her a small data chip. Encrypted briefing, top priority, not from Riva, from Araya. Leon raised a brow. The president? Not for military eyes, the counselor added. Only for yours. Later, in the privacy of her quarters, Leon inserted the chip and watched as President Araya appeared in hologram, tired and composed. Captain, if you're seeing this, our analysts have confirmed 2 things. 1, the recall has infiltrated at least 4 command nodes, including one on Vengeance. 2, someone inside my cabinet is helping them, possibly feeding them wartime intelligence. I need someone I can trust, not to stop them, but to find the line where they stop being rebels and start being executioners. You are that someone. Leon stared at the screen long after the message ended. She didn't feel trusted. She felt trapped. Elsewhere in the galaxy, the balance of power was shifting, quietly but fast. The Gentari Ascendancy, a telepathic species with a near-religious disdain for war, had remained neutral for over a century. But Earth's rising aggression had pushed them into unprecedented action. On a diplomatic frequency hidden from Earth's primary scanners, a meeting was held between Gentari envoys and delegates from 6 different species, including survivors of former Koru colonies. What they shared was a chilling revelation. A new alliance was forming. No banners, no open declarations, just a whispered goal: contain Earth. Not attack it, not confront it, just contain it. Isolate it, surround it with quiet refusal. Trade, cut, technology, blocked, exploration, denied. It would be a silent exile, stretching across systems. The plan was risky. If discovered too soon, Earth might strike again, But they were betting on Earth's growing internal unrest, on the recall, on the cracks already showing. They knew Earth didn't fear enemies, it feared losing control, and they were going to make it bleed slowly, from the inside out. Back on Earth, the recall's plan reached execution stage. At 0247 UTC, a coordinated digital strike was launched from 5 separate locations. A virus, crafted from Earth's own outdated quantum handshake protocols, injected itself into Zeta Relay Prime and the Tantalus shield grid. For 22 seconds, Earth's outer defenses dropped. In those 22 seconds, every orbital scanner went blind. Every cannon went cold. Every alarm stayed silent. And for the first time in nearly a century, Earth was vulnerable. Nothing happened. No alien fleet, no attack. Just silence. But the message was clear. A flicker, a breath. That's all it took. General Riva was woken from sleep and rushed to the command room. Her voice cut the air like a blade. "Find the breach, track the signal. I want arrests by the hour." But deep down, she knew the real war had already begun. Not between Earth and the stars, but between Earth and itself. In the days that followed, over 300 people were arrested. 32 were executed under emergency security laws. Dozens more vanished without trial. And for every person taken, 10 more rose. The recall grew bolder, louder, more public, and in the middle of it all, Captain Leon was left with a choice. She could keep chasing shadows, or she could find the soul Earth had lost in the fire. The streets of New Oslo were burning, not with bombs or lasers, but with rage. Tens of thousands flooded the capital's central square, holding up signs that flickered with digital fury. "This is not the Earth we bled for. No more Leviathans. We are not gods, we are ghosts." The protests had started after the 22-second blackout. The government tried to bury it, called it a minor systems misfire, blamed solar interference. But people knew. The recall leaked it, the footage, the documents, even snippets of intercepted council transmissions confirming the quiet plan to isolate Earth from the rest of the galaxy. And just like that, the myth of Earth's invincibility cracked. The people were tired of fear, of watching their planet drift from respected to reviled, of wondering if their children would inherit a throne or a tomb. But the government saw the protests differently. To them, it wasn't a cry for peace. It was the beginning of mutiny. Captain Leon stood in the war room aboard Vengeance, now in high orbit over Earth. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Her ship was still fully armed. Her orders were unclear. She had been summoned not to fight, but to watch. General Riva appeared on the comm link, dark circles under her eyes. "They're planning something," she said. "The recall?" Leon asked. Riva nodded. "Bigger than before. We've intercepted chatter. Encrypted coordination between dissident cells on Earth, Mars, Europa, even Saturn's deep rig colonies." "What do they want?" Leon asked, though she already knew. Riva answered anyway. "Change. Cleansing. A purge of the retaliation doctrine. They're calling it Project Dawnfire." The name lingered in the air. "Dawnfire?" Leon echoed. "Yeah," Riva said grimly. "The idea that a new dawn comes only after fire, our fire, is extinguished." Riva leaned forward. "If they succeed, Earth fractures, our fleets break in two, our enemies move in, and the age of human supremacy ends in a whisper." Leon didn't respond immediately, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure that would be a bad thing. On Mars, beneath the rusted ruins of the original Terran terraforming rigs, Recall Command was in final assembly. Els Renner stood before her field leaders, a group of veterans, hackers, engineers, medics, and former officers. "We've tried peaceful protest," she said. They sent riot bots. We tried coordinated exposure, another added. They silenced the press. And we showed them their systems could fail, that even Earth is not untouchable. Did they reflect? No. They tightened their grip. So what's left? Someone asked. Else inhaled. The only language they still understand. War. But not a war of bombs, not this time. This time the recall wouldn't attack Earth's infrastructure. Not its fleets, not its outer colonies. They would take command itself. Olympus Prime, the underground command corps in the Andes, where Earth's central leadership operated beneath 20 kilometers of mountain and carbon alloy. No orbital bombardment could reach it. No satellite could penetrate it. It was the beating heart of human military and government oversight, and they were going to take it from the inside. The plan was simple in theory and insane in execution. 1. Infiltrate command as routine maintenance and security teams. 2. Use forged ident chips from decommissioned officers. 3. Hijack internal comms and cut all external broadcast relays. 4. Activate lockdown from the inside. 5. Seize the control room. 6. Broadcast a new directive. Dismantle the retaliation doctrine. Deactivate the Leviathan. Disarm planetary strike capabilities. Demand a full referendum on Earth's war policies. It would take exactly 7 minutes. Els said it calmly, as if she were ordering coffee. Because she believed in it, not in victory, but in sacrifice. They would probably die, but Earth might finally listen. Back on Vengeance, Captain Leon received 2 messages simultaneously, one from Riva, one from Araya. Riva's voice was cold steel. Prep Vengeance for Earth Strike Protocol. If Olympus falls, we can't allow recall access to classified command codes, not even for a second. You'll have a 15-minute window. If you see breach confirmation, launch. Earth Strike Protocol. Fire on her own planet, her own species, her own capital. Leon felt her stomach turn. The second message came from Araya. Her voice was quieter now, strained. Human. Leon. They're wrong. But so are we. This isn't a government anymore. It's a graveyard with satellites. I authorized this strike. I thought it was necessary. Now, I'm not sure. If Olympus falls, you'll have to decide what comes after. Not me, not Riva, you. The screen went black. Leon sat alone. The recall moved. At 0309 UTC, 2 dropships left Mars under official maintenance transponders. The names were real, the authorizations clean, no one stopped them. By 0354 UTC, they docked at Olympus Prime's high-altitude relay station. At 4443 UTC, the first shots were fired. By 0405 UTC, Olympus Prime was compromised. On Vengeance, alarms screamed. Unauthorized activity in command, the AI announced. Security breach confirmed, lockdown protocol in effect. Riva appeared, face pale and furious. Do it, Leon! Execute Earth Strike Protocol now! Leon hesitated. She watched the footage. Grainy, shaky, but clear. Armed recall operatives in EarthGov uniforms moving through the corridors of the most secure facility in the solar system. A firefight, smoke, bodies, doors being sealed, one breached terminal. Riva's voice rose. Now damn it, that terminal gives them access to the Leviathan's override codes. Leon's hand hovered over the command. 12 warheads, 1 launch. Olympus would be ash, the recall would be gone. But so would everyone inside. Engineers, medics, staff, secretaries, civilians. Her voice shook. What if they aren't trying to use the Leviathan? We can't take that chance. Leon's voice hardened. And what if we keep taking that chance until there's no Earth left? Riva glared. You're disobeying a direct order. Leon said nothing. She shut off the feed. Inside Olympus, Else Renner reached the control chamber. Her team was bloodied, 2 already dead. But they had made it. She approached the command terminal, hands shaking. "Begin transmission," someone said. But Els stared at the screen. Her reflection looked back. Worn. Hollow. Older than her years. This was it. And she wasn't sure anymore. On Vengeance, Leon initiated a direct override of the Earth strike countdown. The AI responded. "Strike sequence disabled. Awaiting further command." Leon took a breath, then opened a channel. To everyone. Earth, its colonies, its fleets, its enemies, its rebels, a full-spectrum broadcast. And she spoke. "This is Captain Mira Leon of the Earth Dreadnought Vengeance. I was there at Haldron. I gave the order. I watched a planet die. I believed it was justice." She paused. "I watched the Varkari scream as we stripped their system to ash. I told myself they deserved it." Another pause. "I've served Earth my entire life, but tonight I refuse to burn it." She inhaled. "The recall has taken Olympus. They're not perfect, they're not clean. But maybe they're the only ones still asking if we've gone too far." Her voice broke slightly. "So I'm not going to bomb them. I'm not going to protect them. I'm going to listen. And I'm asking the rest of Earth to do the same." Then she ended the feed. And waited. In Olympus, Els stood frozen. She had expected screams, explosions. But instead, she heard Leon, and for the first time in years, she hesitated. The terminal blinked, still open, still active. One button to broadcast their manifesto, one click to demand everything. She looked at her team, then slowly. She shut it down. Across the galaxy, the Council watched. They had prepared for war. Instead, they saw a pause. And that pause, that fragile, trembling moment of hesitation, meant everything. On Earth, for the first time in years, silence didn't mean fear. It meant a chance. The silence that followed Captain Leon's broadcast wasn't like the silence after a battle. It wasn't thick with fear, or the waiting tension before a strike. It was something else. It was possibility. Olympus Prime, Earth's beating military heart, was still under recall control, but there was no counterattack, no retaliatory fleet. No orbital bombardment, no emergency martial law. Across the solar system, everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. But nothing did. Not right away. For the first time since the destruction of Outpost Theta, Earth stood still. And in that stillness, something began to shift. On the 5th day of the standoff, President Araya made her first public appearance since the breach. She didn't stand in front of a podium, no flag at her back, no military behind her, just her. She sat at an old desk, one that belonged to the president of the pre-space era, a relic dug up from a museum, and she spoke not like a leader, but like a tired woman. "We have been walking in fire. We told ourselves the fire kept us safe, that it lit the path, that it was righteous. But now we look behind us and see scorched earth, burned skies, and the ghosts of planets. We are still strong, we are still united, but the question now is, what for?" The broadcast was short. No dramatic conclusions, no demands, just a pause. And for a planet ruled by war protocols and retaliation doctrines, that pause hit harder than any missile ever could. Inside Olympus Prime, the recall didn't celebrate. There were no chants of victory, no speeches, no flags planted. They didn't want to rule. They had never wanted that. Els Renner spent most of her time walking the halls they had stormed just days earlier. Blood still stained some of the metal floors. The bodies had been removed, but the memory was fresh. When Captain Leon entered the facility under formal ceasefire, Els met her without weapons, without armor, just a data pad and tired eyes. "You could have killed us," Els said. "I almost did," Leon replied. Silence passed between them. Why didn't you? Else asked finally. Leon looked past her, at the massive central terminal of Olympus Prime, where war orders were issued, planetary strikes were logged, and retaliation codes were stored. I think I finally remembered what Earth was supposed to be, she said. Else nodded slowly. Then we failed at exactly the same moment, because we forgot what we were fighting for, too. They stood there for a long while. Enemies who didn't feel like enemies anymore. Just two women standing in the ashes of too many graves. The dismantling of the retaliation doctrine didn't happen in a day. It couldn't. Too many systems were built around it. Too many ships, too many protocols, too many minds hardwired to think in terms of vengeance, escalation, firepower. But it started with a single order. Deactivate the Leviathan. The command came jointly from Captain Leon, President Araya, and General Riva, who, in the aftermath, had not been removed, not punished, but left to watch as the world she helped shape began to reshape itself. She issued the deactivation herself. And when the Leviathan's core cooled for the last time, the galaxy felt it. A weapon of extinction, now just another satellite drifting above Europa. Next came the truth hearings, a transparent public inquiry broadcast across all human colonies. Victims of the retaliation era were allowed to speak. Survivors from Koru refugee settlements, Varkari scientists who escaped planetary collapse, dissident voices from Earth silenced during the crackdown. Each one had 5 minutes. No interruptions. No justifications. The truth in its rawest form. And it broke people. Soldiers wept. Civilians collapsed. Political giants stepped down. The hearing's final speaker was a 19-year-old girl, daughter of a Koru medic who had saved lives on Theta before the Koru High Command ordered the massacre. She had fled with her mother before Haldren was erased. I don't want you to be weak, she said, voice trembling. I want you to be better, because no one else can. The feed cut out afterward, not because of censorship, but because too many people were crying. The galaxy, watching all this unfold, didn't know what to do. They had prepared for Earth's next war. Instead, they were seeing a kind of strength they hadn't expected. Restraint. They saw humanity look in the mirror and not flinch. And slowly, cautiously, the Containment Alliance began to loosen its grip. Trade routes reopened, diplomatic envoys returned, and one by one, the old enemies began to reconsider. Even the Jintari Ascendancy, once Earth's harshest critic, issued a single-line communique. The flame that burns brightest often dies first, but if it learns to glow, it can warm 1,000 worlds. Earth responded with something unexpected, an invitation. Not to discuss war or treaties or reparations, but to build the Harmony Accord, a new multi-species council designed not to rule, but to listen. For the first time in recorded galactic history, Earth proposed a council where humanity would not have veto power, where decisions would be democratic, not enforced through fear. And when the first Harmony Station was built, a floating monument between Earth and the old Koru borders, its walls carried no weapons, just gardens and names. Thousands of names, from Theta, from Florence, from Haldren, from every battle, every mistake, every victory that had cost too much. Captain Leon never returned to active duty. She resigned quietly, refusing medals or honors. She moved to one of Earth's new outer colonies, Borealis, a quiet, oceanic world where storms hummed instead of thundered. There, she worked with children, taught them about stars, about navigation, about choice. No one there called her a hero or a monster. She was just Mira. Sometimes they asked her about the war, and sometimes she told them stories. But always, always, She ended those stories with a question. What do you want Earth to be next? And she waited for their answers. Else Renner was imprisoned. She requested it. Her actions had caused deaths. Her strike team had breached Olympus Prime. She didn't ask for forgiveness, but she was granted a trial, not a tribunal, not a military verdict, a real, public trial. The verdict was clemency with record, a judgment that acknowledged the crime, but also the cause. She was released a year later, and when she walked free, she didn't return to rebellion. She joined the Council of Memory, a new body designed to record Earth's past honestly. Every mistake, every crime, every injustice. A digital museum of memory. Because forgetting, she said once, is how monsters start breathing again. As for Earth itself, it changed. The retaliation doctrine was replaced with the Preservation Pact, a new framework that prioritized defense, diplomacy, and preemptive de-escalation over devastation. Orbital weapons were not dismantled, but repurposed. Some became part of interplanetary rescue networks. Others were retrofitted to power terraforming arrays or deep space exploration beacons. Humanity didn't become soft. It became smart, and in becoming smart, it became trusted again. Not feared, not hated, but trusted. Years passed. The name Haldren was taught in schools, not as a shameful secret, but as a hard-earned lesson. Outpost Theta's ruins were preserved, but surrounded by a dome of light and still air, so that even in death it could breathe. And New Florence was rebuilt, not as a colony, but as a memorial garden. Its streets named after the victims, its trees grown from the ashes. The last page of Earth's darkest chapter wasn't written in war reports. It was written in the voice of a child. One day, years after the final protest, during a Harmony Accord tour on Earth, a Valari boy asked a human ambassador, "You're the ones who erased a planet, right?" The ambassador knelt, smiled faintly, and said, "Yes, and now we plant them." The boy blinked. "Why?" And the ambassador said, "Because we finally realized we were never meant to be gods, just good ancestors."
Oh. よしよしよしよし。なんか取れた。なんだこれ。へそ？もうマゴチじゃん。